You don't actually coach one team. You coach three completely different teams on the same field at the same time. Over the last 8 months, I've talked to high school coaches, middle school coaches, even 8U rec coaches, different states, different programs, and the same basic problem. They say, Patrick, I've got kids who've been playing since they were 8, and then I've got kids who just picked up a stick last month. I can't run two separate practices, but I also can't run the same drill for all of them. If that sounds like your life right now, this video is for you. Because the real problem isn't that you haven't found the right drill yet. The real problem is that no one ever showed you how to think about practice when your roster lives at three totally different developmental stages. So in this video, I'm going to show you why your new players and your vets are having completely different experiences in the exact same drill, how to spot which stage each kid is in about 3 seconds, and then how to design your practices where your best players are pushed, your beginners don't drown, and nobody checks out. You'll see exactly what changed for me when I stopped chasing the perfect drills and started coaching three teams on one field on purpose. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're running a settled 6-on-6 offense, and your experienced guys, the ones who've been playing for years, they're reading the defense, they're making cuts, they're finding the open man, and they look like they get it. But the newer players, they're standing on the crease, they're not really moving, or they ran to the wrong spot, or they caught the ball and panicked because they just have no idea what the play is supposed to look like, and they have no idea what to do in that specific situation. So you stop the drill and you explain it again. The experienced guys are standing there frustrated because they already know all of this, and the new guys are overwhelmed by the information, and they're probably not going to remember it anyway. So now you're stuck. Do you push the pace for the top guys and lose the bottom half, or do you slow it down for the newer players and watch your best athletes disengage? I was at this exact same spot at Grandview. I had 60 players on one field with three actual different teams, and some had been playing since elementary school, others were brand new to the sport, and the experienced guys were ready for more complex schemes, and the newer guys couldn't catch under pressure yet. And I kept trying to find the right drill that would magically work for everyone. And I'd end up dumbing things down for the newer players, which killed the energy for the experienced guys. Or I'd push the pace and the newer players would just kind of disappear into the background. Even though it looked very active, they weren't really touching the ball much. So either way, half my team wasn't getting anything out of practice, or at least that portion of practice. And so here's what I didn't understand at the time. And it's something that most coaches have never been told. So here's the thing that actually changed this for me. When I first ran into this problem, I did what most of you do. I went down the rabbit hole on like athlete development and the lacrosse athlete development model. And they have great ideas, tons of stages, where they go from knowing something to not. And then all of it is useful at a 3,000-foot level. But standing on the sideline at 4:15 on a Tuesday, it didn't actually tell me what I needed. Like, what am I supposed to look at in this drill? What should I expect as a player moves from one stage to the next? And once I see that change, what should I do differently as a coach? The models did a good job of describing what happens to the players in theory, and a bit less on the here's what you're actually going to see and here's how you need to coach it. But so I built a simpler lens that actually lives with me on the field, and I'll tell you the exact moment that it clicked. So I was deep in the lacrosse athlete development model, the LADM, and I'm reading through their recommendations, and there was a chart. And one of the things that the chart had was it had 4v4 was appropriate starting at 10U. That's the standard. That's what the research supports. And so that same day, I'm standing on the sideline watching my son, who was 6, playing in a 7v7 game, and it hit me. 7v7 inherently creates 4v4 settled around the ball. And my 6-year-old is standing in the middle of a 4v4 situation that the development model says isn't even appropriate until 10U. And so the game put him there. Nobody asked permission, nobody checked whether he's cognitively ready, which is good, right? And then the whistle blew and there's the situation, and it's completely outside of his intellectual capability. And that's not just one example. That's the reality of the sport at every level. A 10v10 in high school creates a 6v6, and your freshman who just started playing, he's standing in that 6v6, whether he can process it or not. The game doesn't wait. And so that moment changed how I thought about everything. Because up until then, I was thinking about player development as, When should I introduce this concept? But the game doesn't care about your introduction timeline. Like the game introduces it for you. The question isn't when should they do it? They're already doing it. The question is, what can I realistically coach within this situation given where the player actually is? That's what gave me the 3 following stages. Do it, coach it, and own it. Now, every skill, every strategy, every concept that your players will ever learn follow this same progression. And each player will move through them in their own way. Some kids will develop their skills early, but they can't get like the tactical awareness of how to understand 3 moving parts until high school. Whereas a kid that picks it up in high school may have the tactical awareness, but be slowed down by the fact that they don't have the skills to not think about controlling the ball. The key is that the stage belongs to the player and the skill, concept, or strategy, not the drill, which means that you can be running the exact same 3v3 and coaching 3 completely different things at the same time, depending on the player. So the first stage is do it. Now, do it does not mean permission to attempt. It means the game is going to put this player in a situation, whether you prepare them or not. They're going to do it. And this can be for skills too. Like my son does behind the backs. He does them. Does he do them really, really well? Sometimes. But so your job as a coach is not to try to teach them the full complexity of what's happening around them. Your job is to reduce what you're coaching to what the player actually can process. At this stage, the player's mental bandwidth is consumed with like doing the skill itself, catching, cradling, throwing, footwork. But so what you see at that level is, their eyes are on their stick, not the field. They catch stiffly. They stop when they catch. They stop when they throw. And so what you coach in those moments is more about being an encourager and limiting what they have to think about in that moment. Like if you have the ball, run. Like you're not having big tactical conversations. Like their brain is going to be full regardless of what you do. And so being an encourager of very basic concepts where they know exactly what they need to do is where we kind of have to dial back our idea on what we can put into any set or any experience. Like their brain needs to watch the stick because, the motor skill isn't automated yet. So their brain's kind of full. The next stage is coach it. And this is when a player is intellectually capable of understanding the strategic components of what's happening. So based on their own perception of the situation, like the skills are functional, they're not automatic, but they're good enough that they have some bandwidth free to start noticing more than just the ball. And so what you see is that they look up more, they start reacting to defenders, they occasionally spot an open teammate. After a failed dodge, they look up for a pass instead of forcing it. And so what you can coach within that is where is their awareness at? Now, I'm talking about a very young level, but at the high school levels, it's a bit more nuanced because the kid who is focusing on his stick, he still can't read the field. And so that's a big thing we've got to get over. But they do have a better conceptual framework of managing multiple items within whatever it is they're asked to do. So let's say you get a basketball kid. He may need to get his stick skills up to a level where it becomes automatic, but then you unlock all of his perceptual framework of what basketball is, and now you're off to the races. But so within Coach It, this is where you ask them questions about what they saw. You connect what they should be looking at to the reads they should make to what they should do. You're not stacking 5 things on top of each other. You're allowing them to see a situation, judge the situation, and then react. From that framework, it's what did you see? What does it mean? How do you react? And then they get to be in that decision framework as many times as possible. Now, own it is if the player understands it well enough to know what the other players should be doing as well. Like not just their role, they see the whole picture. So stick skills are automatic. All that mental bandwidth is available for reading the defense, anticipating slides, and playing faster, and then utilizing their exceptional skill within it. What you see is that they can scan the field while they cradle. They move before the pass arrives. They anticipate problems. They direct teammates. They self-correct without you saying a word. Now that looks different at every level, obviously. But so what you coach is you set problems. Like what's your read if they shut off the crease? How could you force a different slide? You challenge them with constraints and complexity, and you use them as peer coaches because explaining what to do in relationship to a teammate is one of the strongest signs that a player owns that idea. Now, with the peer-to-peer relations, it's important that we build the concept of I. Like in any problem or something goes wrong, it should always start with like, I could have this and it would have helped you here. Like maybe I needed to call back, back, back because I saw you pick it up and I was behind you. And so the idea is to put the frame of reference that the player has the ability to communicate to teammates in a way that they're not blaming anyone. They can present the problem as like, hey, Billy, I need you to like step away with your hands because it creates a better angle and you'll have your hands free then. But so owning it means they kind of understand it. There's also the cultural piece that has to be built on top of it. Now, here's the part that most people get wrong about these stages. These stages are not one label per player, and they don't belong to the drill, they belong to the player. Most drills can be run at any level, at any practice. The drill itself doesn't have a stage. What has a stage is the player running it, and more specifically, what the coach chooses to focus on with that player inside the drill. Take a simple 3v3 half field game. Like you can run that with your 8U team, you can run it with your varsity, same drill. But what you're coaching inside of it is completely different because the players are at different stages. And it goes deeper than that. Like a player is not a do it kid or a coach it kid. Every player lives at different stages for different parts of the game at the same time. And so here's what I mean. You might have a, junior who's been playing since third grade. His stick skills, they're automatic. He catches, cradles, throws without thinking, and that's own it for stick work. But two-person defense, reading when to slide and when to stay, how to help his teammate. He's still figuring that out. That's the coach it stage for him in that framework. Maybe he's do it depending on the situation. Same kid, two different stages at the same time. And it goes the other way too. Let's say you have a sophomore basketball player who just picked up a stick last spring. His stick skills are still in the do it section with his eyes on the stick. He's stiff when he's catching, like the whole thing. But you can't even evaluate his tactical awareness yet because his brain is full trying to hold on to the ball. Like there's no bandwidth left for reads because his stick skills aren't automatic. So when I say do it, coach it, own it, I'm not describing three types of players. I'm describing the lens that you apply to each part of the game for each kid individually based on which one you're doing. It's not about which drills you run. It's about how you coach within the drill you're already running, like what you focus on, what you say, and what you expect each player to do. So if we take that sophomore basketball player, he can understand the conceptual framework of the game and why we're moving in whatever way. He's just not going to open up how to like see it and do it in a lacrosse framework until he has his stick skills mastered. So it seems like it's edging out where you don't have to have all of these for every player because as the players ascend, the ages that you're going to be in, do it, coach it, and own it for different aspects of the game are going to align mentally for more of the strategic nature. The key is that there's going to be an average, right? You're going to have an average of, how old are the players? Can they hold three ideas in their head at once if they're at the high school level? And for most of them, they can. The key is what do we focus on in order to unlock the skills to allow them to think about what you're trying to have them do in the game. And so the other part of the do it, coach it, own it framework, and this is for the parents and the players who are starting, is that the expectations should be that you've played for 20% of your life in order to be the average of your age group, right? So if I say I start playing when I'm 10, by the time I'm 12, I should be able to be in the middle if I've been playing lacrosse consistently for those 2 years, because it takes time for the stick skills to develop. Same idea with a 14-year-old. If he can bring his stick skills in those first 2 years up to automatic or the average level of what it is, he then unlocks every other skill that he's built in those other sports that he may have been playing. And so it's a bit tough to conceptualize because there are different portions of the game that have to have that do it, coach it, own it perspective. But when you visualize it in that way, it allows you to dial the right things down to allow for better practices, more meaningful time on the field without making it boring for your advanced players and have your lower players kind of fall away. And so here's the range piece that matters. Even within a stage, there's a spectrum. Like take coach it for dodging. One kid might be just entering it, and so he sometimes changes directions based on the defender, but it's inconsistent. Another kid at the same stage is almost out of it, but so he reads the defender's hips before he initiates, and he's attacking the top foot. Like both are in that coach it stage, but what you say to each of them is different. And this is just regular coaching. Like the first kid, you're asking a simple question like, which way did you go? Where was your stick? Was your stick protected? And you're connecting the action to the awareness. With the second kid, you're pushing him like you read his hips, like you attack the top foot. Now, if he kind of overshoots you, what do you do? Do you roll away? Like what are you seeing past your own defender? And so he's almost in that own it stage. And so the same stage has different coaching within it, and it's all based on kind of what you see in terms of their awareness. And that's more intuitive to coaches, right? Like we can see a player who's having trouble with one thing and dial into that thing regardless of where they are in the coach it stage. The key is making sure that when we're building strategic concepts that it allows the players who may be in the own it stage to utilize their skills within it without overwhelming all of the players that are at the do it stage. So instead of thinking like top group versus bottom group, start thinking for this skill, this situation, these components, like who's in do it, who's in coach it, who's in own it. Because the same kid might own it for catching and be in do it for help defense. And once you see your roster through that lens, skill by skill, not player by player, the mixed skill problem kind of stops being mysterious and it becomes like a bandwidth problem and a coaching focus problem where you can let your better players be free. And it also explains something you've probably noticed. Why are your experienced players sometimes looking lost on defense, even though they dominate on offense? Like defense is harder cognitively. The ball carrier controls the tempo. The defender is always reactive, always processing more inputs with less control. And so the defensive stages almost always lag behind the offensive stages by a year or two. And that's not a flaw in your coaching. That's like how their brains are trained to work. Now, here's why all of this matters for your drills. And it's simpler than you think. So instead of running your full 6v6 offense with a mixed roster, hoping that everybody figures it out, you've got to shrink the game and what they're focusing on. So 3v3, 4v4, half field, like small space. And I don't mean as like a warm up, I mean as a primary training tool. Here's why this works and why it's not what you think it is. Most coaches hear small sided games and they think, it's like just dumbing it down for the newer guys. No, you're not dumbing down anything. You're creating the exact same game situations your players will face in a full 6v6, just with fewer variables, right? Think about what happens in a 3v3. A player gets the ball, they have a defender on them, they have two teammates. Like that's the same fundamental decision they'll face in a 6v6. Like they've got adjacent guys, right? So then they think, do I dodge? Do I pass? Who's open? Where's the help coming from, right? The decisions are the same. There are just fewer people to track. And here's the part that makes this powerful for a mixed skill roster. Like your advanced players still get to play. They still get to use everything they've got. Their dodges, their vision, their ability to read the defense and create for teammates. A 3v3 doesn't limit them. If anything, it intensifies their experience. The space is tighter, the decisions come faster. There's nowhere to coast. Like they're competing, they're engaged, and they're getting better. Your newer players aren't being accommodated. They're being put in real decisions at scale they can actually process. Like take a kid who just started playing in a full 6v6. He's standing on the crease trying to remember where he's supposed to be in your offense. He's got 5 to 6 teammates and 6 defenders to kind of track and see if he can process. And so he freezes. He stands still or he catches the ball and panics. Now put that same kid in a 3v3, he gets the ball. There's one defender in front of him. He does the most natural thing in the world. He runs, right? And so he tries to get to the goal, and because he's running at the goal, the defender reacts, he gets a slide, and there's help, right? Well, now there's 2 defenders on him and his teammate is open, right? He creates that 2-on-1 that's the building block of all of lacrosse. And it's not because you drew it up on a whiteboard. It's not because you explained the draw and dump concept for 20 minutes. It's because the game put him in that situation through his own decision of running towards the goal. And that is the moment that you get real coaching within practice. You say, hey man, what did you see? Like, oh, I saw another guy come to me. Like, well, were you looking up? Like, no. Okay, so let's make sure we look up, right? And then, what should you do once that second guy comes to you? Oh, I should pass it. But so within that moment, you're not teaching him a play. You're coaching a decision that is within a framework, and you're connecting his action to what happened around him. And because he actually lived it, because his body was in that situation 2 seconds ago, the coaching lands, right? It sticks. It builds a framework in his head that he'll use in the full 6v6 game, even though you never diagrammed it for him. This is how you build decision makers instead of play followers. If you try to install your full settled offense with a newer player, you're asking him to memorize a sequence. Stand here, wait for this pass, cut when Jake catches it. He might execute it, but he doesn't understand why. And the second the defense does something unexpected, he freezes, right? Because he was following a script, not reading the game. And in a small sided game, there is no script, right? Every rep is a live decision. And because the decisions are real, the learning is real. He's not memorizing your play. He's building the pattern recognition that will eventually make your plays work. It doesn't mean that you can't coach the 6v6 within the 3v3. It means that we're valuing the 3v3 more because team time should be team time, right? You should be working on team concepts they should be able to play because it's the only place that they get to play. And so the value of that decision being the only place that it can be made is far more valuable than working on stick skills for, an extra 20 minutes. An extra 20 minutes of like real play is way more valuable because of the decision framework versus just doing your skills, which they can also do at home. And here's why the stages matter less in these environments. Like, the do it, coach it, own it. Well, in a full 6v6, the gap between those stages is massive. Your do it players are drowning and your own it players are bored. But in a 3v3, the environment compresses that gap. Everyone is making decisions, everyone is involved, and everyone is getting reps. Your own it player is reading the defense, creating mismatches, directing teammates, doing everything that he would do in 6v6, just faster and in a smaller setting. Your do it player is encountering the same decisions: dodge or pass, stay or move, where's my teammate, just with fewer things to track. So the game creates the situations, the decisions teach themselves. And then you get to coach and add your 2 cents within them. That's the whole idea. The environment creates the decisions. Like, you coach within the decisions, and every player on the field, regardless of where they are developmentally, is getting exactly what they need. So how does this actually look in practice? You set up a 3v3 or a 4v4, and you give them one simple framework. For a high school, it may be a push-pull concept, right? Like, if I have the ball, I'm going to run. If I don't have the ball and he's running at me, like, he's either going to push me, but if he's running away from me, I'm going to pull towards him. Simple framework. And then their objective is obviously to score a goal, right? And then from the defensive standpoint, it would be establish your ball right and left. But then once you dumb it down to like a 10U concept, now you can create what we did last year for a younger team, which didn't work at 8U, but it works really well at 10U, which is getters and helpers, right? If there's balls on the ground and there are two getters and there are two helpers, and it works for offense and defense, right? If you're a getter, you're going to go try to get the ball. And if you are not one of those two, you're a helper, which means you're either helping on defense or you are helping as an outlet on offense. That's it. And then they start playing. And then as you see them hit these decisions, you then have the ability to coach within them. And so the idea is not to like diagram it. It's not to stop the drill every 30 seconds with a lecture. It's to watch, and then you coach within what you see. Like, the game creates the situations. A player is going to drive and draw a second defender. A player is going to catch the ball with nobody on him and hesitate, right? A player is going to make a great read and then find the open man. All of these are coaching moments, and they happen naturally. The key is that when that moment comes and then the play goes somewhere else, you can then ask them, what did you see? And then work through any part of the process where they're not seeing what they should, and then what their options are within that. Every question works as a stage, right? Your newer player draws a slide but doesn't pass. You pull him and say, like, what did you see? And he says, I drew a second guy. And you say, well, so when I draw two, and he says, I pass to you. And it's like, cool, perfect. And then they just go, right? And so when you create the framework and you coach within it and you coach within the situations after the ball has moved, you keep every kid playing decisions, and every decision doesn't need to be coached, right? Like, they know when they screw up. They know when they caught it on the crease and they, forgot to fake and just like shoot it at the goalie's chest, right? But that's where having 10 of those decisions over the course of a week, where it actually is him catching and then trying to finish, that's way more valuable than him just really trying to dial in like passing and catching for, 10, 20 minutes a day. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to work on stick skills. I think it's a very important thing that like a good portion of practice be working on stick skills, but within those stick skills, you've got to be coaching each kid on their technique, on what they actually need to do, right? In a good framework that is simple and effective, where they can rely on what you've said in the past when they do get into the situations and remember, oh, yeah, I've got to point my butt end, get my arm to 90, and I've got to turn the stick over, right? So it's got to be simple, quick to be said, so that it doesn't impede their ability to play and to experience it in practice. Now, for the experienced player, he makes the right pass, but it's, a half second late. And so now you're refining, like, okay, well, so what move did you use against the defenseman? He's like, I rolled. Cool. You rolled. And then as you came out of the roll, what happened? He's like, well, I ran, and then, I saw another guy and I threw it. It's like, cool. When you came out of the roll, was your chin to your shoulder, right? Did you turn from here to here and automatically get your chin to your shoulder with your eyes up? And he's like, no. It's like, cool. Well, so next time you do that, just get your chin to your shoulder. And then as you run, you'll be aware of what's behind the defender faster, and you'll make the decision faster, right? And so finding those little nuances is a big aspect of it as well. But so you're refining every player within meaningful parts of the game. And whether it's a higher level or a lower level, you're getting all of it in one. The key is that you're not coaching a system, you're coaching decisions, and the decisions are universal. So whether a kid's been playing for 10 years or 10 months, like, the decision pass or keep it is the same. The difference is how fast they see it and how many inputs they can process around it. The small-sided games puts them all in the same decision at scale, and that matches where they are. So you get all of those ranges. And so the other thing that happens when you coach this way is your players start coaching themselves. Your experienced guys start seeing the game the way you see it. They start pointing things out to teammates, and they start directing traffic because you've been asking them, like, what did you see, for a couple weeks? And now they're asking each other, right? And now they're thinking about, okay, what did I actually see? Like, did I make a decision? Was I just kind of blank there? And that's the culture shift. That's when you go from a team that relies on you to tell them what to do to a team that reads the game and reacts. And it all starts in a 3v3, 2v2. Starts in those smaller games that can be applied to everyone. So when I made this shift and when I stopped trying to install plays with a mixed roster and started designing small-sided games that created the decisions I wanted, everything changed. My experienced younger guys were more engaged, not because I was running some elite level drill. It was because they were competing. The 3v3 was tight, fast, real, like they got to play. And they had to make decisions under pressure that worked for whatever I was building. Like, they had to create it and they loved it. And then once those decisions were built faster, my newer guys stopped disappearing. In the 3v3, you can't hide, and the ball comes to you. But so you're in the play whether you're ready or not. And because the game is smaller, the decisions are clearer. They started seeing things like, oh, when I drive, that guy comes off as man. They're building a sense of the game without me having to explain it. And here's the thing that surprised me the most. The gap between the two groups started closing faster than it ever had before. Not because the newer players suddenly became like super more talented, but because they were getting more reps out of the decisions that actually matter. In the 6v6 drill, a newer player might touch the ball 3, 4 times in 10 minutes. And so in 3v3, they're making decisions every, 30 seconds. And so the volume of real game decisions that they experience in a single practice is just completely different. And the culture piece, I think, is the biggest win. So when every player is competing, when every player is making decisions, when nobody is standing around for their turn in a play that they don't understand, like practice becomes something the whole team wants to show up for. The experienced guys respect the newer players because they can see them competing. The newer players don't feel like they're slowing things down because the environment doesn't let them slow things down. Like everyone is in the game. Here's the bottom line. You don't have one team, you have three developmental stages on the same field. That's completely normal. The answer isn't to, yeah, completely normal. The answer isn't coaching to the top and losing the bottom. It's not coaching to the bottom and boring the top. It's not running three separate practices. The answer is creating environments where every player is making real game decisions just at a scale that they can process. Your advanced guys play freely, compete hard. Yeah. Your advanced guys play freely, they compete hard and use everything they've got. Your newer guys encounter the same decisions in a format where they can actually learn from them, and you coach within those decisions, not by diagramming plays, but by asking players like what they saw and framework their decisions. It's the same game, same decisions, different scale, and every player is growing into a decision maker. If you have a decent understanding of where your players are and want to get a strategic roadmap for your team, I built a free tool for that. It's called the Lacrosse Coaching Mastery Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes and it will map you and your team to the specific strategies in every phase of the game that match where your team actually is. Then you just got to learn those strategies and then go coach it to the players. And then if you want to know how I build through all of the drills and segments and how I link things in practice to make sure we're hitting all of the things at once, that's part of the Youth Lacrosse Coaching Masterclass. And that's a part of the Confidence Coaching Kit, which I will link below as well. Keep building, and I'll keep sharing whatever I'm finding.